What's up, guys? This is a podcast with my guy Val. Can't say his last name, but I spell it in this video that's coming up. Basically, what we're talking about here is just the COVID-19 pandemic that we're in and how we can kind of approach that with supplements, different food, and lifestyle choices. Val is a guy that's been working with my genetics for the past probably about 2 years now. When I really started going down the rabbit hole of trying to understand my ancestor DNA results, my gut microbiome results, and kind of how I can fine tune my lifestyle, my nutrition, different choices that I'm making to really optimize my performance, health, longevity, maybe just something that is feeling better throughout the day as I'm trying to go through my workday. Whatever that may be, genetics is something that you can definitely use to help optimize that, but there is a lot that goes into it. I thought I was pretty well versed in it until I started talking to someone like Val, true professional. So he's really good. This is kind of the listener level is kind of you kind of have to have an understanding of genetics, different terms, S&Ps, polymorphisms, but this probably isn't a great intro to all of that, but it kind of gives an idea of how you can attack the COVID-19 situation in regards to this stuff. It's a long talk. It was almost 2 hours, so feel free to jump around here. I may cut this up in the future and make it into smaller snippets with different topics that we talked. And last thing, it's very raw footage. I did no editing, didn't cut this up at all, so apologize for that. And also my Wi-Fi connection was kind of slow during this video, so it's kind of choppy, but there's some really good information in here that I think it could benefit a lot of people. I hope to do more things like this moving forward, posting them to YouTube, maybe a podcast channel. With some of my friends, we're going to be working on getting some really cool different content out there that's kind of outside of the strength and conditioning scope that we're in now. More things into like a holistic approach to training, nutrition, lifestyle, relationships, bunch of different things that kind of encompasses our entire field, not just training. So bear with me on this. I kind of started this a little early before my official intro, but we talked about it a little bit before that, before we started the live session. So I hope you guys enjoy this.
Is Prisecaru.
Prisecaru.
It's like Price with an S, car U. Prisecaru.
Prisecaru. I might just say, what is your title as well? Like what should I?
My title is Nutrigenomics Researcher.
Nutrigenomics. Honestly, my kind of format for this is gonna be real laid back. So like,
cool.
Kind of it's just really laid back. I'm slowly transitioning into podcast stuff like this. I have a couple guys, a guy in Portland and a guy in Indy that's going to be kind of running the podcast moving forward. But okay. Kind of just maybe it's something where like we just chat every now and then, and I always love picking your brain on stuff like this. So kind of just use
absolutely
as an entryway to that. Let me get my papers organized here. I got a lot of notes from our last talk. Is there anything specifically you want to like really talk a lot about?
Not really. Just general things, general principles. Yeah.
Right. How much time do you have? I don't want to push you over.
As much time as you need.
Oh man.
I have something to do at 1:30. So however long you need.
All right. Get the line here. Would you like to talk about like the blood type and a lot of that? Because I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, we could talk a little bit about that too. Yeah, especially as it relates to cancer, diabetes, hypertension, and the current COVID-19 issue
right.
too.
All right.
It does affect it. And then I had some new ideas. Lupus lupus, people who have lupus seems to be a little bit more protected against COVID-19, and that might be because they have a overactive immune system, so it kind of catches it right at the beginning.
Right.
But if it doesn't catch it at the beginning, it might help trigger a cytokine storm later on.
That's
So there's two
also
different.
something. You want to like explain a cytokine storm here as we kind of intro in a little bit at some point?
Oh, sure. A cytokine storm is when you have a lot of inflammatory molecules being secreted and it overwhelms the system. It's kind of like sending in too many troops into a war.
Mm-hmm.
The area becomes a war zone, just like in the movies.
All right.
Certain Middle Eastern areas, it looks like, 2 years before, it's a bustling metropolis, and now it's just some buildings that are half demolished. That's kind of what your lungs look like if there's a big battle.
Right. I'll probably I'll ask you that here I'll probably just start out with like, what is COVID-19? Just whatever you want to say on that, where'd it come from?
Sure.
Yeah. So I'll just, here in a second, I'll be like, we got Val on here. I'll probably just ask you to say your name because I don't want to butcher it completely.
Oh, that's fine.
It's kind of low key. I also want to say, like, we're not medical professionals.
That's right. This is not nutrition advice, medical advice.
Yeah. So this is just suggestions more than anything, and what Val has seen in his research, stuff like that.
That's right. And then when you ask me what I'll do, I'll tell you I'm a nutritionist, so I have clients. I also work with Peter Diadamo on the Opus 23 program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, feel free to pump anything you want with your products, all that.
Okay.
All right. I'll just kind of start here in a second.
Okay.
All right, guys. I'm here with Val today, and Val is a nutrigenomics. Start over. All right, guys. I'm here with Val today. Val is a nutrigenomics researcher. I've been working with Val for about the last year now. He's over in Champaign by the University of Illinois, and he's been helping me with some of my genetics, DNA research, stuff that I've gotten from 23andMe, and he's got a system that he's built out with some other people. It can really tell you a whole lot more about your genetics, your genetic profile. Val, just kind of intro it there and tell me a little bit more about what you do.
Thank you, Drake. My name is Val Prisecaru. I'm a nutritionist. I'm also a nutrigenomics and microbiome researcher. There's a couple of things I do. First, I'm a nutritionist, and I have clients. People come to me with health questions, and sometimes it's trying to defeat some kind of a disease like cardiovascular disease issues, or maybe somebody has arthritis, or they just want to lose some weight. And I do coaching on that. I do health coaching using genetics and microbiome data, and of course, medical history, et cetera, family history. And then the other thing I do is I work with Peter Diadamo. He's a naturopathic doctor out in the East Coast. He and his dad were the original inventors of the blood type diet, which is turning out to be a lot more accurate than anyone ever thought in the last few years, based on just a lot more genetics information that has come out. And I give the introductory webinar for health professionals, including doctors and nurse practitioners and nurses, dietitians who want to utilize the program. I'm one of the trainers for it.
Oh, nice. So basically that is something I want to hit on first, and just talk a little bit about the blood type diet and what that is. But first, I just want to say for those listening that this is not medical advice that we're specifically giving you guys regarding the COVID-19 disease or virus that we currently have. These are just suggestions that Val has seen with his research, that we're not making any claims for you guys. So just take that for what it is. Val, all right, so can you tell us a little bit about the blood type diet and how that might play into this COVID-19 virus?
Yes, but before that, um, to everybody out there, if you have any ideas or if you want to take any of our ideas, we highly suggest that you talk to your primary healthcare practitioner before engaging in any type of change in your medicine, medical use, pharmaceutical, and or supplement lifestyle use.
Good
So
call.
talk to them first.
Very good call.
So the blood type diet initially came out, uh, the idea started with Peter Diadamo's dad. I believe his name was Dr. James Diadamo. And his initial um, uh, proxy into the whole blood type diet series of events that led to the blood type diet was from him noticing that back in the 60s or even earlier, people who were blood type A tended to have more gastric cancer, and people who were type O tended to have more ulcers, stomach ulcers, and duodenal ulcers too. So that was essentially the birth of the blood type diet. He also noticed that people who were blood type O tended to do a little bit better on a more paleo type diet, and people who are type A in general tend to do a little bit better on a more vegetarian type diet. And that's how it started. And then a lot of research went into it. A lot of people actually did research that serendipitously involved blood type antigens, including Carl Landsteiner, who originally figured out that there are 4 different blood types. And there were some people before him, but there were a lot of studies like the Framingham Heart Study that showed increased risk of certain cardiovascular diseases with people who are blood type A and AB, and more protection for people who are type O. And then blood type B was maybe kind of in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for these, some of them are evolutionary reasons, and others are gene linkage reasons. So the blood type gene sits on chromosome 9 on the Q34 arm, on the Q arm, and it's position 34. So that's a really big locus on your genes. It's 100,000 letters long, and a lot of other genes sit right on top of there, including genes for nitric oxide endothelial function, where you get hypertension, where you get different blood clots as a result of problems in those areas. Also, there are certain digestive related genes and mental health genes like dopamine beta hydroxylase, which helps control dopamine levels. That also sits right on top of the blood type gene. And it just happens to be, it's not the end all be all, but it does affect quite a bit of things. It affects all the cells in your body because the blood type sugar, whatever blood type you are, that is the number one expressed antigen on all your cells. So imagine the thousands and thousands of different proteins and different antigens that are expressed on all your bodily cells, including red blood cells, including intestinal cells. This one is, I think, 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 200 of anything is a blood type antigen, which is extremely, it's probably the most common. So it's like in that movie, My Cousin Vinny, where he says, so you're telling me that the defendant was driving the most common car and the most common tire was on the most common car that you can find in America. So this is essentially the same thing. It is very, very important in physiology, biology, gut function, everything.
Right. Can you kind of feed that into how this would impact people with certain blood types and contracting the virus?
Oh, sure. There are studies that came out recently, and people with blood type O seem to be a little bit more protected from SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19, and people who are blood type A seem to be a little more at risk. Sometimes 20, 30, 40% is the difference. So it's not the end all be all, but it is one factor. And to a lesser extent, secretor status also plays into it. So about 20, 25% of people are non-secretors. So they don't express blood type sugars in all their bodily fluids, which usually is a problem with bacterial infections and some viruses, but in this case, it might be slightly protective.
Now, so we can kind of talk about my genetics a little bit, but I know I'm a type A blood type, and I am a secretor, right? Uh,
Yes, yes, you're a
so
secretor.
kind of talk about what kind of risk I would be at, considering those two things. Just use me as an example for those listening.
Oh, sure. So if you're blood type A, you don't make any anti-A antibodies, which are good because these things attack the spike protein of SARS-CoV-2 as it attaches to your H2 receptor on all your cells, including lung cells. So it physically attaches right in between where those two attach. So if you have anti-A antibodies, and we'll go over how to increase those levels in people who are not type A or AB, then you would be able to have a better fighting chance of not getting it in the first place. And if you do get it, milder symptoms, lower risk of death, et cetera, et cetera. But because you're young, you're probably not going to have as many problems as other people. But let's say you were 90 years old, you may have some issues because one, you're blood type A, two, you're a secretor, and three, you're a male, which are all risk factors for this thing. And there's some research pointing to people of Asian descent, specifically East Asian descent. So not Southern Asian like Philippines, Malaysia, but more Eastern Asian like maybe interior China and Korea, Japan. There may be a slight,
Can you kind of explain why that is, the difference in the two parts of Asia and your risk level?
Sure. It appears that people of, to some extent, Caucasians, but more Asians seem to have higher levels of the ACE2 receptor in their lung cells and other cells. So it may be a factor in this disease. This virus doesn't attach to the ACE2 receptor. It actually attaches and destroys the ACE2 receptor eventually. So you kind of run out of ACE2. And when you start running, and that's why women maybe can defeat this thing better, because remember, women have 2 X chromosomes, whereas you and I only have 1. So the ACE2 receptor is on the X chromosome. So women might have a slightly mutated instructions to make a slightly mutated form or a different form of ACE2 from mom than from dad. So they can make 2 different kinds if need be. And they can also make more to replenish whatever COVID-19 kills. So if you don't have enough ACE2, your blood pressure goes up, and people may have problems with that, especially since it's recommended to get off ACE inhibitors when you have this. So that makes it even worse. So there's some evidence. Now, again, if you end up dying from it, you can't attack me because you're going to have to clear this with your doctor. But right, there is some evidence that you should not get off of ACE inhibitors if you get to the ICU situation level, and stay on them to some extent.
So basically, you mentioned that this virus is destroying the ACE2 receptors over time. Can you just go a little more into detail about that, like kind of how that happens?
Sure. So basically, as soon as the virus is in touch with your body, it's like D-Day 1944, where the US storms the beaches of Normandy, and the virus needs a certain viral load to even get to you. Because as soon as it touches your body immediately starts killing it. You have RNAs enzymes which break down RNA. This virus is an RNA virus, not a DNA virus. There's different kinds.
Hmm.
So your body's trying to kill it immediately as soon as it comes in touch with you. And you have a mucosal layer in your sinuses, nasal passages, throat, which is the initial point of attack. So you're going to have a defensive barrier, and you also have an immune barrier of general out of the box. It's called the innate immune system. You have all these different proteins and mechanisms to stop things before they even get to you. Think of it as barbed wire, tripwire for some would-be thief trying to get into your house. He won't even make it into the house because there are all these obstacles. And once it gets in, then you need your acquired immune system, which is what learns the virus. Usually it takes 2-3 weeks to really get some antibodies against it, and then you can eventually beat it. But before that, you don't really have an acquired defense. You're going to rely on your immune defense, which is very complicated and involves dozens of different types of molecules mainly. And we look at a lot of those, and a lot of those we can find in your genetics. So I can tell people if they have a significant risk of getting it. For example, if people get both copies of, let's say, a cystic fibrosis gene, they have cystic fibrosis, very likely. But let's say maybe they only get one copy. Now they don't have cystic fibrosis, but maybe they have slightly impaired lung function, ability to clear things out. There are these proteins called surfactant proteins. They're essentially soap. Most proteins are mostly protein, but these proteins are only 10% protein and 90% lipid or fat. And if you have genetic mutations in them, there's increased chance of having asthma, bronchitis, persistent bronchitis, bronchiolitis, problems with your alveoli, cystic fibrosis, different types of pulmonary fibrosis. And that's one of the manifestations of, the cytokine storm, is you have a lot of fibrosis.
Right. So basically that's something I wanted to hit on is people that are at high risk are those people with lung issues, surfactant issues like cystic fibrosis, asthma. Is there any other people that are at high risk? We already talked about kind of certain parts of Asia that might be at high risk. I kind of have some questions here that I can just read off in regard to that. How does exercise and your diet, especially during this time, play into your risk factor?
Uh, Having enough exercise improves your chances tremendously, because the more exercise you have, the more cardiovascularly fit you are. And cardiovascular disease is a big risk factor. In fact, it's the number one risk factor for COVID-19 mortality. And then I think a close second is diabetes. So anything metabolic syndrome related is a big problem.
So do you think right now during this time, I've kind of been reading a little bit about maybe people are throwing in new types of exercise, or they're maybe using this time, they have more time in their hands, so they might be exercising twice a day, 3 times a day. They're kind of over exercising to some extent. Maybe they're in a huge calorie deficit because of that as well. Would that put these people at a higher risk of getting this virus if they come in contact with it?
Yes, yeah. If you overexercise during this period of time, it's probably not good for you. You probably want to just do some type of maintenance and not Like I know there are athletes who exercise 4, 5, 6, up to 8 hours a day,
Right.
wrestlers and um, different types of collegiate and professional athletes. Now is probably not the time to do the super, super intense exercise. Maybe just a couple hours a day or whatever you were doing before, maybe
Just
cut
keep
back by 50%, only 3 hours a day.
right. Just because these people, that would put them at more of a risk of contracting the virus if they did come in contact with it. Is that right?
Right.
If they are
Yeah,
over.
it would help. And also, heat and humidity help beat this virus.
Hmm.
That's why in the summer, you don't get it as much. And then also, people are making more vitamin D. So that also helps people from getting it once it warms up. So you'll notice the situation will improve earlier in places like Florida and Arizona and Southern California. And then maybe 2 weeks later, a month later, the situation in New York and Seattle and Chicago will improve. That's because it's still a little colder there. And the colder it is, the better it is for this virus. So viruses like cold weather, and they like it to be dry because they don't really have a host. They're just some packaged DNA, or in this case RNA, almost the same thing,
Hmm.
and it's just packaged in a layer of fat. It's a lipid bilayer, and these things just kind of float around, hoping to get lucky because they have no real host at the time. And the best way to destroy them is with heat, humidity, and surfactants like soap.
So you mentioned humidity. This is a question I had specifically regarding that. Would like putting a humidifier in your house be something that could be beneficial during this time?
Absolutely, it would improve the odds of not getting it, and then if you get it, to be able to beat it before it gets into your lower lungs.
Right.
Upper respiratory tract infection versus lower,
Right.
tremendously. So if you can keep your humidity levels in the 40 to 60%, that would be fantastic. A lot of people these days, especially in the winter, humidity levels in their houses 30%, 25, 20% because it's cold and dry. If you
Mhm.
open the window in a big room in your house, you're going to lose a gallon of water just from the air. So
Right.
it's important to keep it humid. Ideally, you want it around 50%, and you definitely want it above 40 to make it less hospitable. And it's not just the hospitality that we are taking away from the virus because of humidity, but the increased humidity also keeps your mucous membranes moist and be able to fight stuff off. Because most people, except for this 2, 3% of people or 5% of people that might have, sometimes it could be up to 10, depending on what protein or gene, or it could be up to 30, some of them, depending on what they have. Your immune system's pretty good and it compensates. You may have deficiencies in one area that compensates in another area and you don't even notice it. And you end up living to 100 years old and you didn't even know you had this huge problem over here that your immune system just took care of in a second. It doesn't even think twice about it. And that's how it is. It's not just, you have one type of T cell and then it just goes after stuff. The immune system is super complicated, and it needs to be because it's facing complicated attacks. So, for example, this thing goes after the ACE2 receptor. Okay, so let's say your body fixes that. Now it's going to have to go after something else because uh, you're stopping that one direction. So it's just amazing how awesome the immune system is in
Right.
beating things. Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of a funny off topic a little bit, but so I went to the grocery store last night. I'm back home with my mom's house now due to the virus. I've left the university just because there's no work like on hand at this time. But basically, she had
Right.
me go to the store last night, and she wanted me to buy soap, and on the list it said antibacterial soap. Now I was like, "Well, Mom, this is a virus. It's not a bacteria. Can you kind of kind of mention a little bit about different things that people should be buying to kind of prevent their transmission at home, maybe like soaps, hand sanitizers,
Oh,
stuff.
sure. So antibacterial soap is good in general. It kills bacteria, but it's not going to do anything against the virus. The soap part will. So regular soap and water, maybe washing your hands, maybe using the soap twice, washing your hands for half a minute, that just obliterates this thing. And people wash their hands. You also have to make sure you get the back of the hand. Usually people don't watch the back of the hand, especially near the fingernails, and also the back of the thumb is another area where people just forget. So when you're washing your hand, you should also kind of wash the top of it too. And if you get soap on that a couple times with some warm water, there's not going to be hardly any COVID-19 on you. You could have just given a big hug to the most infected COVID-19 patient in the world and you had it all over your hands. And after you wash it, it's going to be hardly any left because the
Right.
soap just obliterates it.
And also, it's not that you can't get it, it can't transmit into your body through like your hands. Like it has to be, if it's on your hand, then you touch your mouth, nose, an area that it can get into your system. That's the only way it's transmitted, right?
That's right. The only practical way to get it into your system is through your eyes, nose, and mouth. Any other way, it's just really rare. Like, you know, I just can't foresee any other way. That's the only way it gets in, and it has to get in large amounts because if you notice, people who get exposed to more of it have worse outcomes. So it's not just getting exposed to it; it's getting exposed to a lot of it. So, for example, in the future, we may expose some people to a little bit of it so they can build antibodies if we know what that level is. At this point, we don't know. But there is a level above which you're a lot more likely to get really sick. That's why a lot of doctors and nurses are dying. It's not that they've been exposed, but they've been exposed to too much of it and they're losing the war. So instead of sending 2 aircraft carriers to fight a war, imagine you're sending 30, you're going to be able to win better. So the COVID-19 virus is going to be able to attack you better if you're just constantly being exposed before you have a chance to make antibodies against it. So for healthcare practitioners in the future, they may test their titer of anti-COVID-19, which is available starting this week. And if you're protected against it, then it won't matter how much you get exposed to. But if you don't have any titer against it, then at that point in the future, there may be vaccinations or just a matter of getting exposed to a little bit of it and then checking the titer. Okay, you still don't have it. Next 2 weeks later, you get exposed again, you check the titer. Okay, now you have it. So just confine yourself at home for a couple of weeks, and then now you're completely immune. You have full herd immunity. You can walk around. You don't have to have anything else. You're completely immune to it.
You did just mention there if you get infected. The question I had here was if you get infected next week, what are you doing?
If you
What's your
get
approach?
so there's several stages. One is pre-infection stage, and there's certain things that you can do and take to help. And then after that, if you actually get it, there are other things you can do. So pre-infection stage, vitamins A, C, and D seem to work best. Vitamin A is not beta carotene. We're talking about the retinol, the active vitamin A. So you don't want to overdose on it, but about 1,000 IUs is pretty good to take. As far as vitamin C, people are taking 2 or 3 grams a day. Liposomal is better, but any vitamin C is way better than no vitamin C. There are 22 studies that I looked at in the last month regarding vitamin C and outcomes. Every single one showed a benefit. Reduction in fever, reduction in duration of cold or flu, reduction in severity, reduction in mortality. Every single one, it was anywhere from a 6 to a 40% reduction. And it gets bigger in older people. So the older you are, the even more important vitamin C becomes. And then vitamin D, I tell people usually about 10,000 IUs a day until this thing is over. And for kids, of course, it'd be less. If you have kids, maybe 2 to 5,000 IU, depending on how old they are, just in line with the upper limit recommendations. Temporarily, you can go above the UL. The RDA recommendations have an upper limit. You could go maybe twice that and have no problems. For an adult, you really need like 50,000 IUs of vitamin D for a few months to actually have toxicity. And right now, everyone's D levels are low because we're just getting over winter.
Right. I've been taking about 5,000 IUs per day, and then just trying to get outside for a little bit each day as well. You think I should increase my vitamin D closer to 10,000?
I would. I'd probably take 10,000 until June or July, and then go back down to 5.
Right. Now, I've also seen some people say vitamin D, don't take that during this time. Why are those people saying that? Do you have any idea?
They're saying that because of certain connections to immune system function. Don't believe any of that. Vitamin D is great. Same thing with elderberry. People are saying don't take elderberry because you can cause a cytokine storm. But these people have no idea what a cytokine storm is. If you take elderberry, it'll increase certain molecules, certain inflammation molecules that attack viruses. It'll maybe double them or triple these molecules, these inflammatory molecules. When you have a cytokine storm, your levels are 1,000 times what they normally are. So I highly doubt that while you're sitting there intubated, almost dying in the ER, that you're going to worry about the 2 tablespoons of elderberry you had 2 weeks ago. You're probably not. So it's just a matter of effect. And the cytokine storm is way bigger than the elderberry issue. And also, elderberry has other antiviral properties as well to help beat this thing. So I'm not saying take it one way or the other, but if you don't take it, there's more elderberry to go around for the rest of us.
That's funny. Kind of to get back on this vitamin C and A. This is something I wanted to hit a little more. So originally, when we talked last week, you mentioned taking vitamin A, and my initial go-to was sweet potatoes. I was like, all right, I'll eat a sweet potato a day. But looking a little more into that, you said the retinol version is better. The plant sources, those are more carotenoid sources. So what's like a good source of vitamin A in the retinol source or retinoid source? Is it more like liver, animal products, or should you just suggest taking it in a supplement?
I suggest taking it a supplement, but beef liver does have quite a bit of vitamin A.
So why is it that you want that version and not the other? What makes one better than the other?
Well, one, there's studies that show that the active vitamin A or retinol increases MBL levels, mannose binding lectin. This is part of the innate immune system, and the more MBL you have, the more you can kill different viruses and bacteria. In fact, people who have too much MBL start getting autoimmune issues because they're killing too much stuff. And people with low levels of it, they are unable to kill enough things, but they're better at accepting a liver transplant or some kind of an allograft because their immune system is a little weaker, and they may have fewer problems with some allergies. So it just depends. Also, MBL kills cancer cells too. So you're going to have on one side not enough immune system. That's where you get cancer, problems with COVID-19. And then you go on the other side, you have too much immune system. Now you get into autoimmune issues and other things, cardiovascular. So it's kind of a spectrum of effects. And it's not always like that, but more often than not, it is. You'll have some genetic defect in people, and it'll either make them better in one way and worse in the other way.
Mm-hmm. So vitamin C, if you're going to be dosing with vitamin C, I brought this packet down here. You said 2 to 3 grams. Now this is 1,000 grams here. This is the emergency? Is this something you would recommend, or is this a very poor form of vitamin C?
Oh, it's fine. I would take it. In fact, I have some emergency.
All
I
right,
also have some liposomal. So NEC is good.
and how do you know, like if you've taken too much vitamin C?
If you take too much, you're going to have some diarrhea because of the osmotic effect of vitamin C. If you have too much of it by osmosis, you're going to be pulling water out of the rest of your body to flood into your intestines, and you'll have like a little bit of diarrhea. The way to test that is you want to find out how much C your intestines can take. And the healthier your intestinal tract means the more villi and microvilli and villi length and basically more area uh, that your digestive tract has. So you can test that by taking 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams every 2-3 hours until you get a little bit of soft stools, and then now you kind of have an idea. For some people, that might be 3 or 4 grams a day. Some people that might be 8 or 10 grams a day. I'll give you an example. And also, liposomal would be higher because liposomal vitamin C is vitamin C attached to a fat. So it's going to be harder to uh, pee it out, basically. So it'll get higher levels in your blood and in your system. And if you take 1,500 to 2,000 milligrams every 2-3 hours, eventually you're going to have a little loose stool, and then you'll know what your limit is. So that's what I do.
And is there a downside if you do take too much vitamin C, or is it pretty hard to get to that point?
There's not much downside. You just might have a little soft stools or loose stools for the next couple hours. But
Right.
then once you stop, then that stops. And let's say that happens at 8 grams a day. Okay, then you know maybe 5-6 grams a day is your max that you can tolerate. And you
Right.
can go higher with liposomal. Your limit might be 7 grams a day, but with liposomal, it might be 10 or 12. We're not really sure.
That is, when we talked earlier, you did mention that you were kind of taking a certain form of vitamin C now, and then you were kind of stockpiling the liposomal for, I guess, if things go south pretty quick. You kind of just want to expand on other supplements that you're kind of keeping at hand in case the stores close. You can't get your hands on these supplements, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. The supplements that I would stockpile a little bit on would be some liposomal vitamin C. It's hard to get right now, but if you go to some different websites, you might be able to get a bottle or two. I have, I'm taking one bottle right now. I'm just at the beginning of it. I have 2 bottles on the side stockpiled for me or a family member, especially if somebody ends up in the ER, that might save their life. So I have a couple bottles of that stockpiled. And I would also stockpile a little bit of elderberry because that might be harder to come by. Everyone's taking it. But fortunately, not everyone, because some people just don't understand that you don't want to listen to every Tom, Dick, and Harry talking about COVID-19. And that also includes some doctors. Some doctors are giving incorrect advice, in my opinion, and with the disclaimer that this is not medical advice and that you should talk to your doctor, then that absolves me of liability so we can even discuss this. I am not 100% in agreement with when doctors get on TV and talk about this thing. And that includes Dr. Fauci, that includes all of those people. We just do not see eye to eye. And maybe that's because Dr. Fauci is not a nutritionist. Maybe it's because he's not a nutrigenomics and microbiome researcher and analyst. I mean, he's probably a very good doctor in the emergency room. You'd want him maybe operating on you. But usually MDs outside of certain drugs and medicines and their specific field know less than they think they know about health and medicine, if that makes any sense. And
Yeah.
they're also heavily influenced by different political forces. So some things are political, some things are lack of knowledge, just the information gap, and just you didn't know about it because you learned it from some old doctor who grew up in the 50s and that's how they did it.
Is there any other supplements you would suggest taking right now? I know we kind of talked a little bit about maybe fish oil, and that might have a little bit of protective role, or maybe if someone is in that ICU and they've got a really bad case of this virus, maybe a high dosage at that point, or maybe it wouldn't even help at all. My
Yes.
kind of thinking a little bit along the lines of like a concussion injury is the thought process I had there.
Oh, sure. So people who have concussions, the number one thing that they can do to help them is to get into an HBOT, hyperbaric oxygen therapy. You get into one of these chambers for an hour and you're breathing in 100% oxygen at high pressure. That increases a whole bunch of proteins made by certain genes, which help heal your brain. So in the future, every single athletic department in a college is going to have an HBOT. Some of these things, it's just for one person. One person gets in, others can fit 5, 10, 12 people. But the bigger ones cost, $1 million. So it's a little harder to get to.
Right.
But this would help with COVID-19 cases as well, because it would increase oxygen saturation of the blood, and it would also increase immune function because natural killer cells increase in function if there's more oxygen. So that's one of the things you want to beat these things. And that reminds me, people should try to get more sulforaphane into them. And that's because sulforaphane reduces viral load and increases natural killer cell function. And sulforaphane, the best place to get it is broccoli sprouts. But you can also just go buy a supplement of it. And it's incredibly good. It works with NRF2, which is a gene that encodes a protein that goes down in the elderly. Heat shock proteins also works with that. It also works with reducing ARDS. There's research showing this is acute respiratory distress syndrome. We'll talk a little bit about that later because I have some ideas about that. Reduces asthma. It increases the protection of your lung cells from dying. And also, people who take sulforaphane, let's say in a polluted city, they start excreting through their urine increased amounts of airborne pollutants. So you're breathing this stuff in, and then your liver tries to process it. So there's different stages. There's like stage 1, and then there's stage 2, liver detox, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you pee it out essentially. So you're better able to do that the more sulforaphane you have. And that you get that from cruciferous vegetables like, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, etc. But specifically broccoli sprouts and just a straight sulforaphane supplement. And you can get that for your specific blood type from Peter's store, which is foryourtype.com, the number 4, and then yourtype.com. And you could also get it anywhere on Amazon. I mean, sulforaphane's all over the place, but it's really useful for this situation.
You did kind of just talk a little bit about the liver there. That's something I wanted to talk about. So people that are heavy drinkers, maybe alcoholics, they're probably obviously at a lot higher risk if they do come in contact with this virus. Is that right?
Yeah. If you're a heavy drinker and you have a history of alcohol abuse, you're going to have an impaired liver function. And there's people who aren't heavy drinkers who also have impaired liver function. It's called NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, fatty liver essentially. So both of these groups of people need to be extra careful because of this COVID-19 outbreak or pandemic.
And something kind of on the alcohol trend here, something I've seen specifically with people in the college age, maybe 20s, 30s, something, really all people for that matter. So they're home and they don't really have a whole lot to do. So they're engaging in a little more drinking during this time period, I would say. I guess drinking a lot in excess probably lowers your immune system, especially during that time and probably the day after. So that would obviously be a risk factor for contracting this virus if they did come in contact with it. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, that would be a problem.
Right.
The more alcohol you drink, the more your immune system is depressed. Same thing with having a lot of sweets, having a lot of sugar
Mm-hmm.
also depresses the immune system. Also, uh, fasting is not really a good thing to do at this time because fasting also temporarily depresses your immune system a little bit. I'm not talking about intermittent fasting. I'm talking about going on a 3-day fast or 1 week fast. You probably want to wait till July, August before resuming any kind of fasting regimen. Some of my clients, we uh, we devise different fasting protocols for them.
That was a question I was just going to ask about fasting. So if you're an individual that's been fasting for a while, like long before this virus outbreak, would it still be would it not be recommended for those people to continue their fasting regimen and stop? Or if they've been doing it and their body's kind of used to it, would it be okay then?
Uh, if you were fasting, I would probably recommend that people stop fasting.
Right.
But if you're intermittent fasting, that's different. That's not really a long-term fast, and you can do intermittent fasting. Some people only eat like 6 or 8 hours a day. Like they'll eat just from noon to 8. That's a type of intermittent fast where you're fasting 16 hours essentially. I think that's okay doing it
That's
that
all
way.
right.
But I wouldn't do like a weekend fast or a week-long fast because that does depress the immune system a little bit.
Right. So just to kind of wrap that concept up for some of the listeners, basically anything that is an extreme stressor to your body, whether it might be considered a good stressor like exercise, sauna usage, fasting, anything you might see on social media. If you do anything to an extreme during this time period, it's probably not the best thing for your body, especially if you're trying to keep your immune system strong to fight off this virus if you do come in contact with it.
Totally agreed. Yeah, too much of anything right now. Too much alcohol, too much junk food, too many sweets, too much exercise, not enough exercise. You don't want to do any of these things right now. Now, resveratrol, which is in red wine, is very beneficial against COVID-19. Resveratrol has been shown to improve things. So you could take a resveratrol supplement, or you could drink some dry red wine, but not like a bottle a day. Maybe like a glass of wine or two a day would be fine during
I
these
was,
times. That's about as much alcohol as you probably should ingest.
yeah. Is there do you get the amount of resveratrol that you need from a glass or two of wine, dry red wine, or should you take a supplement?
You get a pretty good amount, but I would take a supplement. Like I took one this morning. I
How
took
much do
some
you
extra
take?
resveratrol. Oh,
What's your
about 50
dosage?
milligrams.
50 milligrams. And
And I
are you
take that maybe
pretty,
twice a day, maybe 100 milligrams a day, but some people take more.
are you taking that every day now during this time period or
I
kind of,
wasn't until last week, but now I'm taking it about every day. Yeah.
so you probably read a couple studies, a few studies on that and were convinced to start taking that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good evidence that resveratrol will improve outcomes. There's no COVID-19 research because it's a brand new virus.
Right.
No one's done 2-year studies on it because there hasn't been 2 years. It's only been a few months. And other people are saying that we don't even know when this thing started. They say it started in January, but there's some evidence pointing that maybe it started in December. We're not really sure. And the reason for that is there's some unexplained increase in non-flu viruses. If you look at the studies in the UK, uh, hospital visits went up significantly in November, December, and they didn't test positive for flu. So nobody knew what it was. So there's a small chance that you may already have been exposed to COVID-19, and I may have too. And a lot of people who got sick in January may have already gotten COVID. We're just not sure
Right.
because there's not enough data. And also, the cause of death is not really clear. For example, in Italy, if you're old and you may have had it, they'll just list it as you died of COVID-19. Whereas, maybe only 12% of the time you actually died of that. Maybe you would have lived 4 days longer had you not had it, but they say, oh, COVID-19 killed you, when really, no, it was about 60 years of smoking that killed you. So it's really hard to put a finger on how many deaths occurred and then where we are in this peak, and have we achieved the ability to flatten the curve, where we are in the curve. There's a lot of research going on right now that's ongoing, but it's not entirely clear.
Right. That's kind of something I had thought about a little bit. Like obviously in the middle of the basketball season, we were traveling around to a lot of different stadiums in a bunch of different states, and we were exposed to 10, 15,000 people pretty much every night. So kind of when this thing broke, I was like, well, I kind of had a little bit of a cold here a few weeks ago, some coffee, and it lasted a little while. Like, did I have the virus? I was exposed to a lot of different people, different states. So what do you think a large percentage of people have already probably been exposed to it and their immune system was just healthy enough to kind of fight it off?
It's possible. It's hard to tell right now, but if I were to guess, they say that there are, 300,000 cases. Is that worldwide? Or I think, no, a million, 1.3 or 1.4 million cases worldwide, right?
Hmm.
It's probably more, my opinion, it's probably more like 20 or 30 million cases right now. And if that's the case, then the mortality rate goes down, because if you have the numerator and the denominator, the bigger the denominator, the smaller the total number. So the more people we find out that actually had it, then the less dangerous it becomes. It goes from something like 2 or 3% mortality down to 0.2% mortality, which would be good in our case, so fewer people will die.
And that is another question. So if you've already had the virus, um, can you get it again this season?
No, in fact, not only can you not get it again, but you can never get SARS-CoV-2, and that's another that's another half truth or ignorance that's going around. If it mutates slightly, you're still not going to get it. You're just never going to get it again. If it mutates to some other virus, yeah, there could be some new virus 5, 10, 20 years from now, but it won't be this one. And also, it's really hard to figure out if you're positive for it or negative, because there's false positives where you test positive, but it's not true. And then there's false negatives where you test negative, but that's not true. You really have it. And you can't know what it is right now because nothing's 100%. And also, you've been seeing coronaviruses, or your immune system, my immune system, all the listeners, we've been getting coronavirus head colds all the time. 20 to 30% of all head colds are coronaviruses. So this is nothing new. The spike protein is nothing new. The coronavirus is nothing new. None of these is new. The only thing new is there's a little insertion in a certain protein in the spike protein, which alters the shape of it. So it's just going to take us a little while for us to figure out what that is with our acquired immune system, so we can beat it.
Right. You think we're pretty close to finding out a way to handle this virus, like whether that be a vaccine or like how close are we to developing things like that?
There, right, right now, we are. I think we're already beating it. There's a lot of research that points to hydroxyquinoline and its original drug quinine, which was used by the British Army 2, 3, 400 years ago, some Native Americans showed some British soldiers that if you take cinchona bark, which contains quinine, you'll be able to not get malaria or beat malaria. And that's how it all started. And that's one reason the British Army has been so successful back 300, 400 years ago, because they weren't getting as much malaria going into all these hot, humid environments where malaria was rampant and they didn't have immunity to it. Like, for example, you go into certain parts of Africa and there's a lot of sickle cell anemia and there's some thalassemia. And these are advantageous mutations that protect against malaria, whereas the British soldiers didn't have that, but they did have quinine. And quinine is an endosome alkalizer or alkalinizer. So what it does is you have these endosomes, which are these little spheres where protein is made. And in the endosome, you have the last finishing touches where your body makes various proteins. So the virus comes along, commandeers your cell, whatever cell we're talking about, let's say it's a lung cell, takes it over and starts making its own proteins, including the spike protein. And there's a couple dozen different proteins this virus makes that so it can evade detection by the immune system and go into other cells, etc. So the endosome doesn't work well if it's at a high pH, if it's real alkaline. So it just doesn't work. You're stopping the manufacture of extra viruses and sending them out. And that's what quinine does. That's what quinolone does. And that's what hydroxyquinolone does. If you can't get your hand on some cinchona bark, you can also try andrographis. Andrographis paniculata is an herb. It's a traditional Chinese medicine herb that may also be an endosome alkalizer.
And those would be better once you get the virus, or?
I would take it even beforehand. Like I'm taking some of that right now, and I know people who take it.
Which one are you taking right now?
Andrographis.
Andrographis. Can you spell that for me? So.
Yeah, it's spelled like androgen, andro, and then graph, G-R-A-P-H, and then I-S, andrographis.
Andrographis. All right, just so if people want to get those things, they can kind of know what to look for.
And also, if anybody wants to see what part of the immune system, like they have low MBL levels where they would need extra garlic and onions, or if they have a non-functioning MBL system, so garlic and onions wouldn't even help them. They'd be able to. They would just, if they send me an email, I could help them figure out their genetics. I can be reached at val@atlasgeneticsinc.com. That's my email, val@atlasgeneticsinc.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to hit on. So obviously everybody's different. So some people will probably need a little different things to prevent this virus from them contracting it, or if they do get it. Do you want to dive into a little bit of that and about how your genetics kind of make this more variable?
Oh, sure. So in general, people who are blood type O, they are able to make anti-A antibodies. And these antibodies can attack the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So it's a good idea to have anti-A. The anti-A attacks the connection between the S protein and the ACE2 receptor, which is where the virus gets into your body. So you want to increase your anti-A levels. The way you increase your anti-A is you want to give yourself a fake blood transfusion, not a real one because that'll kill you, but you want to give yourself just a tiny little mock blood transfusion of blood type A. And the way you do that is you take some chondroitin sulfate. If you're blood type O, you don't want to take chondroitin sulfate usually because your stomach acid will break down all the different blood type A sugars. That's what chondroitin is. It's just a bunch of blood type A sugars, which is N-acetyl galactosamine, all tied together in a long chain. So your stomach will break that down into individual type A sugars, and that will appear immunologically to to the small intestine of a blood type O person that they're getting a bacterial invasion. And the bacteria is blood type A-like, because you can have A-like bacteria and O-like, et cetera, et cetera. And it'll make extra anti-A antibodies just to make sure your body clears it. So that's your fake blood transfusion to increase anti-A. And that'll increase IgM, which is the best one. That's the crab antibody. It'll also increase IgG, which is the tagger antibody. It doesn't really clump together COVID-19 viruses, but it does tag them. And then other molecules come in and attack, which is not as effective, but it's still effective. So people with blood type O can make both anti-A IgM and anti-A IgG. People with blood type B can only make primarily IgG, which is still way better than nothing. So someone who is type B should also take some chondroitin.
So I'm type A, non-superior. What should is there any certain foods I should be eating
Oh, absolutely.
right now?
Not including any genetic information that I would get from the average person, but just off the bat, if I just knew they were blood type A, I would recommend they eat a lot of garlic, especially fresh pressed garlic. So the alliin can convert to allicin. There's some enzyme that does that, but if you cook garlic without pressing it, just the whole clove, it'll destroy that enzyme, so it won't work. So yeah, fresh pressed garlic, onions, leeks, shallots, chives, those all increase MBL2 gene function, which makes NBL. Also, retinol increases that too. That's why you want to take the active vitamin A. And also, prebiotics increase it. So prebiotics would be larch arabinogalactan. Arabinogalactan is a fiber being sold, prebiotic fiber. It's really good at increasing natural killer cell activity, general immune system. Because remember, 70% of all your immune cells are not circulating around your body. They're all in your intestines. Because that's the only connection you really have with the outside world. You don't need a lot of immune cells on your skin. Your skin's good at defending things just by being your skin, just by having a bunch of dried cells. Things get sloughed off. You don't really need a lot of immune cells in your skin.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need a huge amount of immune cells in your ear. You have all the wax. You basically need a bunch of immune cells from your mouth all the way to your butt, essentially. That's how you communicate with the outside world, really, as far as immune function is you're interacting with a whole bunch of bacteria, viruses, fungi, also helminth and other different types of parasites. All these different entities you interact with in your gut.
So basically, I've also looked into different foods as well that I should be eating. Some people are recommending different nuts, seeds, specifically to get like more trace minerals in your diet. Is there any trace minerals that you would recommend? Maybe just a multivitamin that has a lot of these trace minerals in it, or is that not something you see as important right now?
Oh, they're very important. The top 3 minerals recommended, I would say, are zinc, selenium, and iodine. Zinc, I would do 20, 30, 40 milligrams a day of elemental zinc. So if it's zinc picolinate or some other zinc form. Iodine, probably like an iodine dropper. I wouldn't take too much iodine, but even if you have those emergency potassium iodine pills in case of a nuclear holocaust, they say take one a day. You could take like a quarter of that pill a day. That'd be fine too. I think those are 65 milligram pills. I don't even remember, but I remember buying some a long time ago, worrying about our nearby Clinton reactor blowing up. So for some reason, I just went out and bought some potassium iodine. But yeah, you can take a little bit of that, but there's a lot of iodine supplements that you don't want to overdose, but it definitely helps. Most people are a little bit iodine deficient. And then selenium is a really big deal for immune function. And selenium, people are saying maybe take 1 or 200 micrograms a day. I'm taking about 1 or 200 a day.
You're taking that in supplement form, right? Because
Yeah, and if you have a multi mineral, that works too.
I listened to a podcast yesterday, actually. I'm on a bike ride by, it was the Gabby Reese podcast, but Dr. Paul Anderson, I don't know if you know, familiar with that name,
Yeah,
but
Dr. Anderson, yes.
he recommended eating Brazil nuts during this time for the selenium content
Yes.
in those.
Yep. If you can't find a good selenium supplement, Brazil nuts are pretty good. 2 Brazil nuts have more than the recommended RDA of selenium.
Really?
So in
I
a
didn't know
pinch,
that.
they're really good to eat. But there's some lectins and there's some other proteins in Brazil nuts that I wouldn't just eat Brazil nuts. Not a lot of people. It doesn't work well with a lot of people. But in a pinch, yeah, I would definitely eat them now. If you had some and you could not get your hands on some quality selenium supplements.
Ironically enough, I went to the grocery store last night and looked for Brazil nuts, and they were all sold out. I don't know if
Oh
people
yeah.
listen
Now
to
the funny thing
that
is,
podcast or what.
I'll tell you a story. A month ago, I go to the store. All the vegetables are sold out at the local Walmart except for leeks. And I'm like, leeks, that's like one of the biggest NBL agonists. That's what everyone should be taking. And that's just an example of the information gap. Some people just don't have the information because no one ever told them, or the people who tell them don't know about it, or there's political motivators, et cetera, et cetera. But there are definitely things you can do, like these 3 minerals: selenium, iodine, and what's the third one? Zinc. Those 3
Yep.
really work with immune function, specifically against this virus.
Yeah, I take a zinc pigolate. I think it's pigolate supplement, about 30 milligrams a day. I should probably up that a little bit, probably closer to 40, 45.
No, that's fine. 30 a day
That's
should
enough.
be enough. And you don't have cardiovascular disease or diabetes, so I don't think you're going to have much of a problem.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. All right, you wanted to talk a little bit about ours. You mentioned that earlier.
Oh yeah, ARDS. So
ARDS, sorry.
So acute respiratory distress syndrome. So the way the way people think that it works is it's killing a lot of lung cells, and then people get intubated. But the problem is, if you intubate someone and they just can't get the oxygen into them, it's not going to be very effective. It'll be somewhat effective, but I think a much better way is to prevent the inflammation that kills all the red blood cells in the first place. And the way you do that, especially for my clients who have more inflammation problems and a high risk for a cytokine storm, and we could look up all the different genetic variants that somebody has, and I'll send you a report later this week about your risk for a cytokine storm, because you can actually not perfectly predict it. It's not, we don't have any studies on it, but it's evidence-based literature that shows this variant and that variant will increase a risk of sepsis, risk of fibrosis. These are the main things that, yeah, we as researchers, we're looking at a lot of fibrosis genetics, septic shock, sepsis, and also general lung function too.
Yeah, Val, you're coughing on here. People are gonna.
I know what's going on here.
No, before we came on live today, Val and I were just talking. He said he was up till 4 a.m. last night, some research, right?
That's right, exactly.
Yeah, so I just think that's funny because obviously you're kind of at the front of this, trying to find all the research for prevention of this virus or if someone does get it, what they can do. Myself, I don't want to say an exercise specialist, but that's what I do is train people. So I often don't listen to my own advice that I would give to a client. I usually like to experiment on myself, probably do some exercise that I shouldn't. It's just funny that you mentioned that because obviously sleep is very important during this time. That's probably something you mentioned to your clients as well. Do you just want to hit a little bit on the importance of sleep during this time period?
Oh, yeah. Sleep is super, super important. It helps reset your body. It reduces inflammation. It improves gut function, which also improves your immune system because most of your immune system is in the gut. Melatonin is good for you. People should take some melatonin, maybe a little bit, 2 or 3, up to 5 grams a day. Some people are saying it's contraindicated before you get this, and then it's very indicated later on after. So we don't know what the actual answer is. The optimal amount of melatonin is somewhere between 0 or not at all to maybe 5 grams a day at night before you get it, if you were to get it. And then the optimal amount once you get it and you're really sick, maybe 20 to 40 milligrams a day. And that, not just that, but there are other things you could take for sleep. That includes lemon balm. It's an herb that's really good for sleep. GABA aminobutyric acid, gamma aminobutyric acid, GABA. That's really useful too to help people with sleep issues. Yep, and of course melatonin, and also a 5-HTP, 5-hydroxytryptophan can help some people. We can figure out what works better when I look at people's genetics, but just off the bat, those are pretty good supplements. And also chamomile. Chamomile is a very, very good sleep inducer. It's natural. If you take a lot of chamomile extract, it is it can make you fail a drug test because it reduces the conversion of testosterone to estradiol and estrogen. So it is an inhibitor of that enzyme we don't want to mess with if you're in competitive athletes and get drug tested. You can have chamomile tea, but I wouldn't take a big chamomile supplement because you're going to fail a drug test.
All right, and that's important for maybe some of the people that are listening to this right
Yes.
now, that may be in competitive sports. Um, Obviously, they're kind of at a halt right now, but we don't know
Right.
when we're gonna get back. So just be careful with that.
Oh, and one more thing. Another thing that really helps people fall asleep is not looking at screens. So that would be a really good time to read a book or magazine or just hang out with friends, maybe have a glass of red wine in the evening. If you look at a screen, the bright light prevents your body from making melatonin to help you fall asleep. And it takes about an hour. So if you want to go to bed at, let's say, 11 p.m., you kind of want to stop watching TV and stop looking at your phone around 10.
Now something I do for that is I wear blue light blocking glasses.
Yeah, that works
Just
great. That works
just
great.
because I do a lot of work on my phone, on my screen, so I have trouble completely shutting that off before bed. So I have limited the blue light on that filter on my phone and wear the
Nice,
glasses a few
nice.
hours before bed. So
Yeah,
that's something I try to do before bed. You just mentioned maybe like socializing with family, maybe right before bed. Obviously, the social distancing thing has been put in place by the government, pretty much nationwide, worldwide at this point. How important is it to stay social during this time? Because obviously, we read studies that being social is good for the immune system. People that are not as socially engaged, they may have a depressed immune system, different things like that. Is it pretty important to stay social in the best way we can during this time period of social distancing? What are your thoughts on
yeah. Social distancing is very important. It's going to be really important for the next couple months. After that, it's probably not going to be that important because enough people will have gotten this thing and built immunity to it, and it won't be flooding hospitals with patients. But yeah, for the next couple months, I would say after 4th of July, it won't be as big a deal.
All right.
But for right now, it'll be, you should definitely stay a few feet away from people, 6 feet, 8 feet, something like that. The number one thing to stop this thing is the same thing that worked during the 1918 flu pandemic, and that is wear a mask, a face mask. Now, they didn't have N95 masks in 1918, but yet they were still able to stop the spread of it. All they did is just have some handkerchiefs, 2 or 3 handkerchiefs tied to your face. It's not perfect, but it reduces 70, 80%.
So is that something you're wearing when you go out in public? Like maybe if you go to the grocery store or out to get the mail or anything like that?
I haven't really been going out too much, but yeah, definitely. I'm going to be starting to wear a mask when I go out. And
Yeah,
if a lot of people do it, it's just really hard to spread it. It just spreads a lot more slowly. Not
right.
just this one, but flu viruses too, everything.
Yeah, I did go to the grocery store last night. I saw more people wearing a mask than I did maybe last week when I went. But one thing that I kind of thought about was I'm touching all these items at the grocery store, and maybe I'm looking at the ingredient label, didn't like it, so I put it back. Probably thinking a lot of people are also doing the same thing. Is it pretty? Should I worry about that? Is it pretty transmittable on surfaces of things like packages? Maybe if I get something in the mail from Amazon, should I be worried about touching that package?
It's probably not a huge deal, especially if you wash your hands and don't touch your face. But yeah, you're going to be getting a little bit of it when you touch various. It takes a few days for it to disappear. I think the best surface is copper. It just takes an hour or two, just because of the element and the way it interacts. It destroys the virus somehow. But the other things besides copper, yeah, it might last a day or 2 or 5 days. I think they found something on a surface after 17 days, but that's kind of rare. It has to be cold and dry, right? So the
Yeah.
virus survives.
Yeah, someone did say just leave your Amazon package sitting at the door for a few days after it gets there.
Yep, I've heard that too. Or you could just do a wipe it with some chlorine tissue. They have these Clorox wipes. But you have to remember, you don't have to not get exposed at all to it. Chances are you've already been exposed to it a little bit. And if you have, hopefully enough to build some immunity to it. The point is not to get a big viral load. That's the big thing. And the way you do that is you just make sure you wash your hands and try to wear a mask when you're out in public. If you look at the countries that have been wearing a mask, Korea and Japan, their curve is very flat. And if you look at countries where they haven't been, like Italy, where everybody hugs and kisses each other, maybe a little bit too much in this instance, and they were ignoring all the mask recommendations, and look where it got them. Unfortunately, they became the de facto guinea pig for the rest of the world on what not to do. So if you are socially a little bit distant and have a mask, and a lot of other people are doing that, we shouldn't have as much of a problem.
Right. I don't want to take a whole lot more of your time here, but is there anything else you specifically want to talk about regarding maybe genetics or supplements? Pretty much anything. The table is yours to kind of talk about that here.
Well, I highly recommend that people try to stay active. It's easy to be lazy in this time period. And it's also easy to freak out and be upset, depressed, despondent. So I would say right up along there with wearing a mask and keeping your immune system strong, which is the body, right? You might want to also focus on the mind and the spirit, because that's where everything starts. So for people who are worried about this, you have to not worry. For some people, it's real easy not to worry. I'll just be suggestive and tell somebody, stop worrying. And they go, oh, okay, fine, I'll just worry less, no big deal. But not everybody's like that. There are some people that either genetically or with, they had a lot of trauma, PTSD, abuse, family history, all sorts of crazy things happen in life. That's life. It's like Kurt Cobain, life has us all, right? So for some people, it's harder to be relaxed and be in the now and not worry too much about this thing. And for those people, it's very, very important that they get the mental help they need. We could help with some supplements. That helps a lot. Also, meditation for some people, some exercise, a lot of exercise, depends on what kind of genetics you have, would be very useful. I would say that's the number one thing is stay mentally strong and have confidence in yourself, have confidence in the people who are working with you, like the doctors and the nurses in your community. Have confidence in them, have an increased sense of team spirit that we're going to get through this together. Try to put political issues aside. Maybe you're conservative and you have a liberal brother or cousin, or maybe you're a liberal and you have a conservative uncle. It would be really good to just put all those differences aside, political, religious, philosophical, ideological, socioeconomic, put all these aside and realize we're all part of the human race, and the human race is having a pandemic, and we're going to get through it in a few weeks, and we'll be a lot better off. And just be more appreciative of wherever you are. So if you're in a place where you have a lot of money and you can afford to get all these supplements, you're fine. And if maybe you're struggling a little bit, maybe just focus on the essentials. Maybe just get a little vitamin C and D, and maybe go eat some extra garlic. That should be enough to put you over the top to be able to beat this thing, in addition to wrapping a bandana around your mouth and making sure your friends and relatives do that too. And that's all I have to say about that.
You just brought up one more point I want to hit here. So I've been really pushing green tea. I know we talked about that last time we met a couple months ago. Specifically for my genetics, green tea is beneficial. And specifically during this time period where people may be more stressed about getting the virus. Do you see stuff like green tea, ashwagandha, different things that are specific to people's genetics that might help with their anxiety, stress levels? Is this something that they should increase during this time period?
Oh, absolutely. Green tea is fantastic. And I didn't even bring it up, and I totally forgot to mention it. So thank you for reminding me.
I'm a green tea fanatic, so I wanted to not forget to mention that.
Yeah, green tea is great for you. Green tea contains certain compounds which are very good for cardiovascular, anti-cancer, and also it kills viruses. It improves your immune system's ability to fight off viruses. But one of the compounds in green tea is ECGC, epicalogalectin gallate, something like that. And these compounds that are found in various different herbs and also teas, specifically green tea, especially if you can get a high quality organic green tea without a bunch of pesticides, you can have a lot of it, 2, 3, 4 cups a day. And that would also help prevent you from getting this in the first place. And if you get it, it would help ameliorate your symptoms and prevent you from ending up in the ER. So yeah, green tea is incredible for this.
Right now.
In fact, I just had green tea before getting on the Zoom call with you, and I completely spaced out. Hey, there you have it too. So hey, we're card carrying.
Heck, I've got some more here when I run out of that one. But you just brought up one more point. I'm a sucker for always adding stuff on here. But you mentioned about people that are maybe in the ICU during this time period, or they've got it really bad. Maybe they're on the, I don't want to say deathbed, but they're getting close to dying with COVID-19, this virus. What is there anything that these people can do that can kind of maybe help their chances of staying alive? like when they're on the
Absolutely.
ventilators?
If you or a loved one or somebody you care about ends up, they're really sick at home and they end up in the ICU, and this is really important. I'm glad you brought this up again. Every time you say something, it's like super, super pertinent. I know you're a real smart guy. I know your genetics. You have an incredible memory, apparently, from your genetic analysis too. Um, it is super, super important if you get really sick or if a loved one gets really sick and you end up in the ICU, or possibly in the next month, there may not be an ICU for you to go to because they might be all filled up. We're supposed to have a certain number of ICU needs, and that's more than the ICU capacity of America. So the worst case scenario, every other person can't even go. That would be horrible because a lot more people would die, or even 3 times the amount. We just don't know. We cannot accurately calculate that now. Hopefully, God willing, that's not going to happen. But if you are very sick, the following things really, really will help you beat it. Liposomal vitamin C, many grams of it, right up until you have diarrhea, and then back off a little bit. A lot of vitamin D. I would go above 10,000. If you're really sick and you tested positive for this thing, whether you're in the ICU or whether you're at home sick because you can't get to the ICU, I would double the vitamin D also. And if somebody ends up suing me next year, I don't care. I'm trying to help people here. Vitamin D, I would go more than 10. I'd probably go 25,000 IUs a day during those critical 2-3 weeks that you're really, really sick. And unless you have fatty liver or liver dysfunction, I would up the vitamin A too, maybe 2 or 3,000 IU. You don't want to go too much if you have liver problems, because then that's going to cause other issues. Because vitamin A is a fat soluble vitamin. People with fatty liver cannot take as much of vitamin A because they can't really store it because their liver is not working right in the first place. So they need less of it because they have a reduced storage capacity. The herbs, the top 3 herbs, andrographis. Andrographis is awesome. Also, stinging nettle root. Nettle is a very common herb. People use the leaves and they make teas and stuff, and that's really good for you, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about UDA, Urtica dioica agglutinin. This is a protein that can help fight off COVID-19, and it's in the root, stinging nettle root. There's a supplement called Genoma EQ. Genoma EQ is available at that same website, Peter's website, foryourtype.com. Get yourself a bottle or 2, and that's going to help save your life. There's another thing called Scutellaria bicalensis. It also may be an endosome alkalinizer. There's different kinds of Scutellaria. They're called scute. This is Chinese scute. Chinese scute is Scutellaria bicalensis. And this herb is very, very good for attacking COVID-19 issues, especially if you need to bring out the big guns. So that's another herb you can take. There's a supplement called Genoma Security from foryourtype.com that has both of them. That has the scute, and it also has the andrographis. But the UDA, Urtica dioica agglutinin, is also very beneficial for severe issues. Also, garlic and onions, fresh pressed garlic, I would have a lot of that, and the onions, notwithstanding any genetic issues that I find with clients. I would just say as a blanket statement, eat more garlic and onions. And that includes similar products like chives, shallots, and leeks.
So basically what we're getting at here is people every night should be eating cruciferous vegetables to get that sulforaphane.
Especially broccoli sprouts. You could sprout your own broccoli sprouts, or you can just get a supplement. It's so easy to get.
And then also adding fresh pressed garlic on top of these vegetables would help kind of double bang for your buck there.
Yeah, I mean, you're at that point, you're attacking this thing from all sides. Especially you add some elderberry to the mix. It's like Lord of the Rings, and there's this big war, and then you have the friends from the north and the friends from the south. They're all pitching in to defeat the enemy. The enemy has no chance, really, if you corner him and outflank him and have all these different surprise attacks from these different compounds. It doesn't really stand a chance. You've got to be really, really you've got to be like close to your death anyway, on your deathbed, dying from something else to die, if you take all these precautions and you don't have any strange genetic variants that predispose you.
Right. So how could I kind of want to wrap it up there. We'll feed off of that question, but
before that, I wanted to say one more thing. Heat is very good. People who, in general, I'm going to tell you what happened in general and how to apply it to this specific issue. In general, people who use saunas and or steam baths a lot have fewer respiratory issues. And that's because all that heat kills viruses.
Right.
The virus loves to hang out in your respiratory tract because it's cool. It's not 98.6. It's like maybe 95 or maybe 90 because you're constantly breathing in 70-degree air or whatever the temperature is. So the viruses like that. So if you go to a sauna that's like 150, 160, sometimes up to 190 degrees, that just kills everything as you're breathing. So this is really good stuff. In fact, I'm going to go take a hot shower after this. And, kill whatever things that may be happening over here. And that's something that's not looked at closely enough. And it really should be. If you take a hot shower and let like really hot water come all over your face and chest, that's going to kill a lot of virus activity.
So for maybe the people that don't have a sauna, like a hot bath, hot shower could also be beneficial.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you don't have that, there are some people going around saying, take a blow dryer and point it at your face and inhale that. Do that, but it can burn you. So I don't recommend it, even though I've tried it just for the heck of it on myself. And I could see how someone can get burned with that. So I don't officially recommend it, but yeah, there are some people who are doing that too.
Yeah, that's bringing up the sauna here makes me think of a point. So sauna is a form of stress. Maybe if people have not been engaging in saunas up to this point, if they wanted to start, they should probably start at a low level of sauna usage, maybe 10, 20 minutes a few times a week, instead of just jumping into this thing for 5-7 days a week for an hour each. That would be a huge stress level to their system. And it may be too much of a stress to weaken their immune system. It might not be beneficial at that point for the virus.
Yeah,
you
I
agree with
totally
that?
agree. I totally agree. You would have to start off slower. You probably only need 5-10 minutes a day or every other day to kill stuff in your respiratory tract.
Nice. So a 5-10 minute hot shower, hot bath should definitely help to some extent.
Absolutely. And also essential oils are really good. Remember, people don't die of the virus. They die of fibrosis and a lot of inflammation. And then because of that, bacteria start to take over and you're getting pneumonia. So I don't know what the number is, but 80, 90, 95, 97% of COVID-19 deaths are from all this inflammation due to pneumonia, due to inflammation, due to virus. So the pneumonia is the final straw that broke the camel's back. And pneumonia, I'm pretty sure, is inactivated by certain essential oils. So if people have access to essential oils, I know there's 2 or 3 big companies that put them out. If you get some high quality ones, especially the breathe ones, the respiratory concoctions or formulas, that's actually not a bad idea.
Essential oils. What kind of essential oils? Do you have any recommendations, or is that something?
I personally like to use lemon oil, orange oil, clove, lavender, but there's a whole bunch of them that are really good for you.
Would eucalyptus be
Oh, fantastic. Eucalyptus is fantastic. And also, what's the one that not the eucalyptus, but the other one too, tea tree oil.
Right. Yeah.
That's another really good one. These things contain compounds that just really beat up on bacteria, viruses, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. So basically, if you had a couple tangible things people could take away from this is get a humidifier that you could put oils in, kind of
Even
get it,
better. Yeah.
kind of get it to 40 to 60% humidity in your home. Kind of get these essential oils floating around. Take a hot bath, hot shower, 5-10 minutes a day. If you got a sauna, have you access to that? Start using that or continue use if you do. Obviously, all the vitamins, the herbs that we mentioned before. I'll try to list those in the show notes here after. One thing I wanted to do is, well, first, do you have any other things you'd like to hit on before we wrap it up, or
Yes.
kind of
If you
covered a
end up
lot?
in the ICU, have your doctor give you IV vitamin C, intravenous vitamin C, along with hydroxyquinolone. And there's some antiviral pharmaceuticals that are used with it. Those are fine. But the hydroxyquinolone, really good idea. High dose vitamin C, really good idea. If they don't offer it, take it anyway and ask them to put it in.
Yeah, because the intravenous vitamin C is absorbed like 10, like it's huge time fold better than the supplement form. Is that correct?
That's right. And if for
Yeah,
some reason there's no access, the next level would be liposomal. If that's not available, just regular vitamin C every 1 to 2 hours
third
until you
best.
have a little diarrhea and then back off slightly. And
So
vitamin D also.
let's say someone listening to this is really wealthy, can afford intravenous vitamin C. Is that something they should be doing daily, if they can afford that?
A lot of people do. They go
Yeah.
into these different IV clinics and they have a multi-mineral, a multivitamin, vitamin C, IV. Absolutely. That'll help your immune system. You can go, every other day or couple times a week and get some IV vitamins for sure.
Right. And then the IV clinic that he was just talking about, you can probably just Google IV clinic near me. I don't know if they're open right now, but basically you just go in and you tell them you would want the vitamin C, and they would hook you up to, like, if you're gonna withdraw blood, right? Something like
Yes,
that, and they would hook you up
that's right.
to be similar to that, and they would pump the vitamin C in you.
Right.
I don't do well with needles drawing blood out of my body, so I think I'm out on that one. But
Yeah, me too. I'm
guys,
not a big fan of needles, and I know a lot of people are. So yeah, it's not really necessary, but it certainly doesn't hurt at all. If you had the right, if you had extra funds, it'd probably be good to get some of the herbs that we talked about, and it would probably be a good idea to get access to a sauna. That's also incredible. I'm sure you get enough sleep.
actually, if people want to buy these herbs and these supplements, can they get them from you? Or
Sure,
should they?
sure. They can get them from me too. Just send
Or
me an email at val@atlasgenetics.inc.com, and I'll
awesome.
get them whatever info they need.
Yeah, I'll put that in the notes as well. Yeah, basically, guys, I just want to say thanks to Val for coming on and doing this today. Val and I have been working together or not working together, but I've been giving him my DNA, my gut microbiome test, family history. Val pretty much knows everything about me at this point, probably a little more than most people do. He knows all my genetics, everything. So he's kind of the guy I trust with all of that. And Val, do you want to tell him just a little more about your system, your AI platform you guys have kind of built out, that you take all this information, like all the stuff that I've given you, and you've made it like real tangible for me to take action?
Oh, sure. Um, so basically, the company is called Opus 23, and that's the program. The company is called Datapunk, and the program is Opus 23. It's a genetics and microbiome analysis program, and I'm one of the developers for it. and it works really well at figuring out what's wrong and backtracking and trying to get to the root cause of what symptoms you have, different symptomology and connection to different genetic variants, and also microbiome analysis, figuring out if maybe you don't have enough bifido, or if you need to make more lactic acid bacteria, or if you need to make more, there's certain Clostridium species that you want in your gut. You may have some too much E. coli, you may have too much H. pylori. There's all these different uh, bacteria species, and we also look at the genus, class, order, phylum, and we rank them in terms of uh, health problems, et cetera. You may have obesity prone bacteria microbiome. You may have depression associated microbiome. There's a multiple sclerosis variants associated with different bacteria in your microbiome. And we can look at all that.
And so it's an AI platform. Is that the right way to call it? Is that what it is?
Yeah. There's certain aspects of it that are AI, but it's not full AI. Obviously, I have to go in there and program it and have it spit out different things. But yeah, there's a lot of artificial intelligence that goes into some of the algorithms.
Right. Yeah, it's really cool stuff, guys. I would recommend reaching out to Val if you're interested in kind of optimizing your health. I know it can be pretty challenging to kind of figure out what the best approach is. And I used to be one of those people that, I did a lot of diet research. I have my master's in nutrition. Kind of leading up to that point, everybody was like, all right, there's obviously a better way to eat. That's kind of the general scope, but then you can really fine tune it after that. And that's something you really don't truly understand until you talk to someone like Val, and he works with you and kind of tells you a lot more about this stuff. It's really cool stuff. And if you guys want to learn more about it, you should definitely reach out to Val. I'll include his email in the notes here. Again, thank you, Val, for coming on.
Thanks a lot, Drake. It's a pleasure.
I think we were over an hour today. I'm not sure the time, but it was a lot of fun talking COVID and genetics, nutrition with you.
Yep, likewise. Talk to you soon.
All right, see you, Val.